Hi guys, Maniac here, and today I'm going to be talking about a franchise, more particularly their first jump into 3D. This franchise, of course, being Sonic the Hedgehog. You know, Sonic was a good friend to many people. Then he suffered his most fatal problem, going to 3D. And the first example of that was Sonic 3D Blast. This game. If you want every textbook example of how not to make a 3D game, I would have to suggest this game. Why is that so? Well, let's take a look. So this is Sonic 3D Blast, a game created in 1996 by Sega for their Sega Genesis as well as their Sega Saturn. In this game, you play as Sonic the Hedgehog, and the plot of it is that Dr. Robotnik decided to invade Flicky Island to once again trap animals inside of robots, and is only doing that to hunt down the Chaos Emeralds. Funny, seeing as how last time we saw the Doctor, he had a death egg, he made it to Angel Island, had a bunch of robots, plus he tricked Knuckles, but he seems to be taking more of a Sonic 1 approach, that being just going to an island, roboticizing animals, and expecting to be able to find the Chaos Emeralds that way, not with any fancy other doodads and what have you. Until the end of the game, but we'll get to that when we get to that. The story is basic, but that's kind of what we want from a Sonic game, really. We don't want anything too complicated right now. Now, the controls of this game are, well, off. Sonic himself has enough speed on the ground. I know some people complain that he's a bit too slow, but let's face it, if we had Sonic zipping really fast in this game, it would be hell to control. Because, you see, he has a bit of slipperiness underneath his feet. You see, because I guess Sega didn't tell you about the other adventure Sonic went through before this game, where he went through a fucking butter factory, because Sonic tends to slip and slide all over the place. It's not so bad in places like Green Grove Zone, where, you know, there's wide open spaces to go, but it's especially a nightmare in something like, I don't know, Chrome Gadget, or any of the other zones, really, where it's very tight and also lots of enemies and hazards everywhere. The controls, though, honestly don't bother me too much. The game is sort of your natural, regular, classic Sonic forte. You're going around and smashing robots to save the animals, though the catch, of course, is that this time you actually have to catch the animals, because Sonic sort of creates this whole conga line with them to jump into a giant warp ring. Why? I don't know. It honestly feels like a 3D remake of the classic arcade game Flicky. In that game, you save a bunch of little birds. The Flickies, of course, would eventually move on and be more well-known in the Sonic the Hedgehog games. Some of the level gimmicks that you will be experiencing in this game, however, can range from fine to downright annoying. In Green Grove Zone, its main gimmick, honestly, is just more of basically getting you used to everything. It's a fairly fun and fine zone. Rusty Ruin Zone, on the other hand, the main gimmick of that zone is that it's a maze, an ancient, old-looking temple place where you're having to jump on these weird spinny platform things to spin around and crash your stuff as if you were Crash Bandicoot. Spring Stadium's gimmick is that it's a flippin' mess. I mean, look at this place. It looks awful. And of course, Spring Stadium being a place filled with springs. In Diamond Dust Zone, the main gimmick of this, of course, is that it's an ice level. That means you're going to be slipping and sliding even more. And with these already slippery controls, you can imagine how much of a nightmare it will be to get through this place. After that is Volcano Valley Zone. This, of course, being a lava level. Riveting. Not much to say about it, just make sure you pack yourself a fire shield. And then we have the Panic Puppet Zone. This zone, of course, being the final level of the game. And it's okay, I guess. There's no real gimmick I can sense outside of all the death traps and stuff around here. Not a whole lot to say. And then there's the final fight, but I'll get onto that later. So here, let's try to be positive, alright? Let's try looking at this and see if we can spot anything that perhaps redeems this game just a little bit. If I can comment on anything, first of all, it's the graphics. The graphics themselves actually look really nice. Granted, the checkerboard pattern isn't really my favorite thing to look at throughout the entire game, but this was kind of ironed out in the Sega Saturn version of this game. The music is also nice and catchy. It's nice to hum to when you're running through these zones. And, some of the levels are kind of fun, I guess? Okay, enough of this positive shtick. Alright, let's get on to the negatives. This game is boring. In every sense of the word, this game is boring. I have no problem running through Sonic 1, 2, 3, Knuckles, CD. Not a problem at all. But this game, on the other hand, going through this game is the most boring experience I have ever gone through. Why is that? Well, the main gimmick of the game, the flickies. In this game, you have to go running around looking for the flickies, and to do so, you're going to be running awkwardly through all these stages, always worried about running fast because you're afraid if you do, you're going to either crash into a hazard or crash into a robot. The flickies themselves also have their own little kind of things. Some will jump around, some will run away from you, some will go towards you, and some just sort of go around in circles, or hop around. And when you get hit, they scatter like that. Kind of like the rings. Except now imagine trying to chase these guys around, and imagine if they fell into the lava over in the Volcano Valley zone. It made me want to pull my hair out. Finding these guys can range from being super simple and only lasting about 5 minutes, at like the least, to going almost 10 minutes and beyond looking for these little birds. It is a pain. That and the platforming in this game is just downright awful. You'll be trying to just hop around easily like you would do in other games, but because it's a 3D isometric game for your Sega Genesis, it means that this is going to be some of the most awkward, pain in the ass platforming that you'll ever deal with in your entire life. I'd have an easier time doing brain surgery with a spork than doing the platforming in this game. I'd have a better time trying to reshingle my roof with a toothbrush and a nose picker rather than being able to do the platforming in this game. I would rather dig a trench and bury my head in it than do the platforming in this game. Because you keep falling through the platforms. And to be fair, that's not just the problem with this game, that's just a problem with 3D isometric platformers in general. Look at Super Mario RPG, for example. In that game, it had its fair share of isometric platforming. That was not fun. This is also not fun. And now imagine it with slippery old Sonic here, because he decided to run through Butter Factory Zone Act 501, and now his feet are slippery as hell. But now let's get on to some bosses, shall we? The bosses in this game are kind of pathetic. The first one just drops a ball and then is dumb enough to come back down to grab it. Not going off to a pile of them, no, he just comes down and expects you not to jump on top of him like you do every other time with his robots. And then, honestly, Rusty Ruin Zone and Spring Stadium Zone are pretty much exactly the same. The only difference is that Spring Stadium's robot is able to come chasing after you and follows you around. Then you got Diamond Dust Zone where Robotnik just sort of shoots at you, which is okay, I guess, with his little snowman bots. It kind of reminds me of the Metropolis Zone boss. Then you got Volcano Valley where its main thing is, well, shooting fire, I guess. Don't exactly see the purpose of this invention, but whatever. Then you got the Panic Puppet Zone, and in that you actually have to fight 3 forms of pretty much the same robot. The first one tries crushing you, the second one tries shooting fire at you, and the last one tries shooting balls at you. Then there's the final fight. To access the final fight, you're going to have to collect the Chaos Emeralds. How do you do that? By talking to Tails and Knuckles. Yeah, rather than help their buddy Sonic because they're just like, you know what, we suffered enough hell in the last game. I mean, sure, Sonic went into outer space and fought a giant doomsday robot, but, you know, I mean, Knuckles fought a Mecha Sonic and Tails pretty much did absolutely nothing. So, in turn, they decide to help their buddy Sonic out by giving him access to the special stage. Yeah, don't help your buddy there try to get into the special stage. Nah, you gotta make him pay for it. Of course, kinda like in the first game, you have to pay 50 rings just to get into the special stage. The special stations themselves are really, really simple. It's kind of like the half pipe from Sonic 2, but it's also not. I mean, seriously, these are some of the easiest special stages in all of Sonic's history. I have no problem clearing them. And that leads us to the final boss. The final boss is sort of like a weird death egg pod thing. I don't know how to describe it. And he has multiple attacks, and you have to go through him a couple times to be able to beat him. And it's pretty challenging. I mean, it's the first time I really felt challenged that wasn't from the awkward controls. Though, admittedly, the one part that I find relatively unfair is the part where he starts shooting the balls everywhere. Yeah, that's a bit of a pain. But then after that, the game is over. And you can get the good ending where you save all the birds. And that's all for the Genesis version. There is the Saturn version, which basically has better graphics, in my thoughts, slightly better music, and 3D special stages that are more similar to the half-pipe, unfortunately. And that's honestly all that I can really say about Sonic 3D Blast. I think the worst part about this game, honestly, is where it comes from. You see, Sonic around this time was expected to have a great big 3D platformer. Because, I mean, Crash Bandicoot had one, Mario had one, where was Sonic's? There was Sonic Extreme, but that game got cancelled. And that left Sonic having to deal with a remake of Sonic 3D Blast for the Genesis, but on the Saturn. I think part of the reason as to why this game gets so much hate is because rather than getting a unique 3D platformer in the early days of the Saturn, instead all we got was a remake of a game that not many people really seem to like. But that's all there is really to say about 3D Blast. So in conclusion, Sonic 3D Blast has some string of potential, but unfortunately they never really hit that point. The game could have been a unique look at it, perhaps like the Sonic side-scrollers, but perhaps just put in an isometric view where it's constant, just more straight narrow paths rather than open playing fields, where in turn you can get lost. And unfortunately, aside from the graphics, which even then most people like to say have, aged by quite a lot, there's nothing really worth coming back to this game outside of maybe the music. If you see this game, I don't see the harm in getting it, but if I were to recommend any Sonic game, any at all, it would have to be Sonic 3 and Knuckles. That is an exquisite classic Sonic game, with beautiful level design, gorgeous graphics, and all-around great gameplay. And that's all the time we have for today, though. So with that said, I'm the Retro Maniac, and I'll see you all next time. Have a good day.